Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this international webinar that is part of the GUC Outreach Program. And this webinar is entitled, What Makes a Successful Entrepreneur? Lessons for Generation Z, basically your generation. And my name is Dr. Noha Al-Basyouni. I'm Vice Dean for Academic Affairs at the Faculty of Management Technology, the GUC. I'll be moderating the session today. I should have been joined by my colleague, also Dr. Dina Yusri, Assistant Professor of Economics at the same faculty. However, she had a death circumstance and she unfortunately cannot be with us today. Our speaker today is Ms. Yasmin Ibrahim, and we are very honored to have her with us. Yasmin is a seasoned professional with 2 decades of experience at the intersection of strategy, financial services, and entrepreneurship. The breadth of her experience, ranging from starting a small business to advising the C-suite of Fortune 100 companies, gives her a distinct level of professional versatility, coupled with a track record of both strategy development as well as operational execution. She has partnered with CEOs throughout her career as a trusted advisor, beginning with her very first role in banking in Egypt. Yasmin is devoted to helping female entrepreneurs and innovators with mission-driven startups to navigate a complex business environment. She founded Carnegie Crescent Consulting to help propel startups towards greater, more sustainable growth, including developing go-to-market strategies, streamlining operations, and supporting their fundraising efforts. As a female entrepreneur herself, Yasmin knows the value of a strong community of women in business who can bring new perspectives and innovative solutions to the table to solve complex problems. Most recently, she led the US strategy team at American Express in New York after having founded her own startup, which is a quick service restaurant concept serving fresh, healthy meals in New York City called Desi Shack. Additionally, Yasmin serves as a member of UNICEF USA's New York board and as a member of the leadership team for Harvard Business School Club of New York's Recover and Rebuild initiative. Now, on a personal level, Yasmin is the daughter of Egyptian diplomats, therefore she has lived in a number of different countries, but is quite fluent in Arabic as well. Yasmin received an MBA from Harvard Business School and also holds a Bachelor of Arts from the American University in Cairo. So, without further ado, Yasmin, we're very happy and honored to have you with us today. And I leave the floor to you to say some welcome remarks to the audience, and then we can start with our discussion session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Noha. And I think first I'll start by saying, I'm sorry to hear that Dr. Dina couldn't be here, and please pass on my condolences to her. Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I have a strong personal connection to GUC, so it's a real honor to be speaking to you today. I'm excited to talk to you about my career, entrepreneurship, and anything else that you're interested in hearing about. So Dr. Noha, please, fire away.
Okay. So after sharing with our students and audiences your impressive bio, can you please talk to us about your career path and your life story that led to who you are today? And basically, we're more interested in what's not in the official bio, And so what are some challenges that you had to overcome, especially at the beginning of your career, especially in entrepreneurship,
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've had if you've looked at my bio or, as Dr. Noha was describing it, I've had a pretty non-traditional career. I've done a variety of different things and I've made a lot of different moves. And, as she mentioned, I'm the daughter of diplomats. So I grew up in many different countries. We moved every 2 to 4 years to a completely different country with a completely different culture. And maybe that's somehow related in the fact that I feel comfortable making these big moves career-wise. But I started off, I graduated from AUC. I had a business degree. I majored in business, concentration in finance. And I can tell you with all honesty, you're all kind of most of you are probably in a position to graduate soon. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was graduating. I thought maybe I'd do marketing, finance. I wasn't sure. And I had an incredible professor who was the CEO of a bank in Egypt who offered me a job in finance. And I said, great, this sounds interesting. Let me give this a try. So I started off, I think of my career in 6 phases. Phase 1 was banking in Egypt. I joined Arab African International Bank, AIB. It was very small at the time, and I got to be part of the CEO's team that was restructuring the bank and doing a really big turnaround project. And I loved it. I worked really, really hard. I loved the people around me. I was learning so much. It was really a great experience. And I was there for 3.5, almost 4 years. But a few years in, I decided I really want to get an MBA. At that point, my brother had gone off to NYU Stern and gotten his MBA, and I thought it was just such an incredible experience. I wanted to do it. So I applied to scholarship programs. I got rejected the first year and then got the scholarship the second year, and then ended up going to Harvard Business School for my MBA. And that, by all accounts, was just a life-changing experience because, undergrad where you are right now, university is incredible primarily because of the incredible faculty and the teachers that bestow so much knowledge and information on you. MBA is different because not only are the professors incredible, but your fellow classmates also have a lot of work experience. So the network you create and the learning from your colleagues is also unbelievable. So I spent 2 years at Harvard, really, really enjoyed the experience. And whereas originally going in, I was thinking, I'm definitely going back to banking. That's exactly what I want. The MBA really opened up all these opportunities and different options. So after Harvard, I ended up joining consulting. There's a company called Booz Allen Hamilton. It's a strategy consulting firm. And I worked with them for 4 years, 2 years in the Middle East. So I was based out of Egypt doing projects in the Middle East, and 2 years in the US doing projects everywhere in the United States. And I don't know how familiar you are with strategy consulting, but it's a very, very demanding job. It's problem solving foremost. It's companies spend millions of dollars basically asking you to come in and say, these are really, really complex problems that we are having trouble solving ourselves. And so you come in as a team, you have to ramp up incredibly quickly on an industry you might not know very well, and have tools at your disposal that help you break down problems and analyze them and come up with viable solutions in a very short period of time. It also, from a personal perspective, involves travel, a lot of travel. Like I would wake up every Monday morning at 4 a.m., get on a flight, go to San Francisco and spend the entire week in San Francisco, and then come back on Friday every week for years. So it's very taxing on your personal life as well. So I did consulting for 4 years. It was an incredible experience. I think the toolkit that you learn as a consultant can be used throughout your career. I have certainly used it throughout my career in everything I've done, whether it be consulting or not. So I got this incredible learning opportunity. And after 4 years of doing it, I think I had reached a point where I didn't really want to be traveling 24/7 anymore. I loved what I was doing, but I wanted to try something new. And that was my third phase, which was basically, I wanted to start a business. And timing of when you do something entrepreneurial matters a lot. And I'll talk about that towards the end a bit. But for me, it was good timing because, I was married at that time, but we still didn't have kids. We had some savings. I really wanted to take a risk and said, if I don't do it now, when will I do it? And I had an idea for this restaurant concept that I wanted to build. And I'm not a chef by background. I don't have a food background at all. It's all finance and strategy. But I was incredibly excited about the idea of building something from scratch, writing a business plan, creating a business and building it. And so that's what I did. I quit my job. They said I was a little crazy. They were like, are you sure? They even wouldn't let me quit. They said, we'll give you a sabbatical because maybe you'll change your mind, and which was great for them. But I wrote the business plan and I said, I'm going to do this. And I spent the next 5 years doing it. And that was such an eye-opening experience because it was so challenging. It was the steepest learning curve I've ever had in my life. I knew nothing about the restaurant business. I knew nothing about construction and kitchen equipment, and managing my team was very difficult because my team in consulting were all MBAs or people from incredible universities like you, and all of a sudden my staff in the restaurant are minimum wage employees that are motivated in a very different way or not motivated at all. And there were many challenges, but it was very eye-opening as to how the challenges of being a small business owner and and an entrepreneur, of working on something 24/7 with no breaks and being the person responsible. And those 5 years were by far the most challenging of my career, both physically and mentally. I don't think I slept for 5 years. And then fast forward 5 years later, I also had 2 kids while I was doing this. So it was quite the whirlwind. So fast forward, my desire from this business was to scale it. Given that I'm not a chef, by the time 5 years had come around, I had 2 successful restaurants running. I had written a letter to President Obama at the time about minimum wage policy and my views about it, what I'd learned as a small business owner. And he wrote back and he talked about it in a speech. And it was such an incredible experience, but I also knew that I couldn't scale it. And that was really what I wanted to do. I wanted to grow this concept, and I couldn't because I didn't have a partner. I hadn't raised money. There were a number of things that I hadn't done right, which is very common of someone in their first entrepreneurial venture. Like, there are lots of very common mistakes. So I sold it, and I said, I'm gonna do something different now. I'm gonna figure out how I can take all these learnings that I've accumulated from being a small business owner and my strategy background, and I'm gonna move on to the next phase. The next phase for me was American Express, and credit card company, obviously huge, which was such a shift from going from a small business to a company that has 60,000 employees and, is everything that happens in the company makes the front page of the New York Times. That was an interesting transition. So stuff that's not on my resume, as you were asking, Dr. Noha, is, the nervousness around, how do I get back into corporate after having doing restaurants for 5 years? This is a big shift. And I went with a lot of confidence, I guess, and said, you know what, I've done strategy, I've done banking. I've also have this incredibly unique experience as a small business owner and an entrepreneur. And I think I would be a great fit for your team. So they hired me into a strategy group. And this strategy group is incredible. The CEO of American Express at the time, his name is Ken Chenault. He had a small team that worked with him to solve like the most complex problems across the organization. And it was just one of the most incredible experiences to work with the CFO and the CEO and the presidents of a business at that level. Was really educational for me and really eye-opening and incredible exposure. And 1 year in to this group that I was hesitant to join, I think initially I got promoted and I ended up leading the group. So I ran this group for, again, almost 3.5 to 4 years. Solving strategy problems, very similar to the work I was doing in consulting, but now I wasn't doing it for multiple clients. I was only doing it for American Express, which I really enjoyed. And then a couple of years ago, this is my final, what I'm doing right now, I decided to go back to entrepreneurship and startup. And the reason was, I think I had spent at that point about almost 4 years in corporate. And while there were so many incredible things about corporate, I really missed being passionate about what I was doing. I liked what I was doing. It was intellectually very stimulating, but I wasn't as passionate about payments and credit cards as I was about other things. And so I decided I would take a step, take a moment to think and say, okay, where do I want to take the next, I've been working now for almost 2 decades and, hopefully, inshallah, I have another 3 decades in me. And what do I really want to do? And how do I want to make sure that it's something that I'm excited and passionate about? So that was the birth of my current business, which is called Carnegie Crescent Consulting. It's also part of multiple things that I do. What I spent some time thinking about was, what am I really good at? what do I know how to do? Whether it's my strategy, skill set, problem solving, mentoring, what do I really care about? And there are multiple things that I care about and I'm passionate about, but one very, very high priority one for me is female professional advancement. And I see there are a lot of women in the audience today, which is great. I saw it in the corporate world where there were so many challenges that were very clear to me, but I also saw it in the startup world where you can see the challenges that women face. And so I wanted to dedicate I wanted to dedicate this business to focus on, well, how can I help, basically mitigate some of these challenges and these obstacles and help, whether it's female entrepreneurs or female business owners, really take their businesses to the next level. So what I do with Carnegie Crescent Consulting is I advise these businesses. I help them grow. I help them raise funding for their businesses. I help them scale their businesses and take them to the next level. In addition to a lot of other nonprofit work that I'm involved in, as well as teaching. So there's kind of a mix now of what I do. And I don't think there's no way I could have done this without having gone through the consulting and the banking and the highs and the lows of entrepreneurship and having your own business. Only through doing all of that are you able to come back, and have some insight that you can share. I guess my final point on this is I remember really being, taken aback by Steve Jobs, obviously the legendary founder of Apple. He, in one of his very famous commencement speeches, he says, things happen in life and there are failures and there are ups and there are downs and there are twists and there are turns. And, at the time it makes no sense. And then only looking back later on in life, can you look back and are you able to connect the dots? And that to me was very profound because, there are times I'm like, what am I doing? Restaurant, consulting, how do these all fit? But at this point in my career, I'm able to look back and connect the dots. And I feel like the connections make so much sense and there's so much value that I can add moving forward as a result of these experiences. So I'll pause there, Dr. No.
Amazing. Actually, I think, I was going to ask a follow-up question, but, I changed my mind about it because, you gave me so much ideas. I think it's very impressive how you have this calm attitude, but yet it's very versatile and flexible. You are able to, shift mindsets and take risks in your decisions. I think this is personality-wise very impressive, and you also listen to your intuition, and you're very motivated about what you do. So I think at the end, maybe you want to talk about some of the personality traits that would, make a successful entrepreneur. But as a follow-up question to that, what do you think gave you that autonomy to kind of transition from one of these roles to the other? Is it just personality-wise or other factors that you think are, also have led to that and helped in that? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think, these are not easy decisions to make, these moves. And, and many times when I make these moves, I'll be talking to, someone senior in the organization or my boss, and they'll say something like, either you're crazy or this is very brave. Why are you doing this? And I think it's a combination of two things. And this is personal to me, but the first thing is what helped me was having something to always fall back on. I worked really hard at AUC and got good grades, and I graduated top of my class. I worked really hard to get into an MBA program, and I had a Harvard MBA. I worked really hard at consulting, and I had a skill set that no one could take away from me. So the real liberation to make moves was after consulting, where I was like, you know what, I have things to fall back on. Like, have the confidence in yourself and in the things that you have done to say, just because I'm doing something different or I do something for a year and it doesn't work out, doesn't erase the fact that I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree, and I have an incredible skill set that is solid. So that gave me a lot of confidence to make the moves, to say, if it doesn't work out, it's okay. I can always get a job. I can always find another job. So I think building that is key. And that's why as entrepreneurs, timing really matters. If you have a breakthrough idea when you graduate and you're like, as like an Airbnb or an Uber or, an Amazon type idea that you think is going to change the world and has to be done immediately, go for it. If you don't yet, but you're interested in entrepreneurship, then take a job that will help you build the skill sets that will help you when you become an entrepreneur. So whether it's finance or marketing, all of these things are incredibly important skills that you're going to need when you become an entrepreneur. So if you're not sure about your idea yet, build those. And so I always felt like I had that to fall back on, which gave me confidence. And the other critical thing is if you decide to get married and you have a life partner, I have an incredibly supportive life partner. My husband, Omar, is incredibly supportive in terms of if you want to, making sure that we're able, both of us, to pursue what we want to do. And the other one's always supporting the other. I think it's very challenging if your partner isn't on board with your dreams and what it is that you want to do. So that was also, I always give him credit for, being incredibly supportive as I made these big moves.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this is very insightful for the audiences. I'm gonna pick on the second question which I had. I mean, I want to go back to this idea of this toolkit, the strategy toolkit that helps you like decipher these complex business problems. So, what do you think are some high priority business problems that are currently, in need of resolution somehow? So do you perceive that the business world is like in trouble or something,
I mean, I don't think the business world is always in trouble. I mean, there are always complex problems, but
yeah. So is there an upcoming financial crisis that we should, foresee in the near future?
I mean, I would say there is immediacy issues. Like right now, if you were to talk about something, you'd say, okay, there's a huge global supply chain issue. We are in a crisis right now because, every point across the value chain of our global supply chain, there has been a disruption as a result of COVID. And it's not at one breakage point, it's multiple. And so to fix that is going to take quite some time and effort and a lot of coordination. So those types of issues are critical and huge because they impact multiple businesses, all the way from like the supermarkets and not having things on their shelves to, the holidays and not being able to order presents to, critical medical supplies not being delivered to hospitals. There are really big issues like that. There are also more generic, all-encompassing issues. Like one that I work on quite a bit has to do with corporates now have a role in education, which is interesting because the pace of technological advancement and development is incredibly rapid, much, much more rapid than it was for the last generation or the generation before. Which means the traditional, you go to university and you get a lot of education, then you go to a job and you spend the rest of your career there. It doesn't work because the people need to be trained and retrained. It's called lifelong learning. And so companies are starting to realize that they have a role to play, and it's not just taking from employees, it's also they have to provide them with and invest in development of talent as it continues to grow within the organization. And I was at a conference around this, and it's a real struggle because it's a huge investment on the corporation side. And the argument is typically, well, what happens if I invest in my people and they leave me, and they go to a competitor? And, the counter argument to that is, what happens if you don't invest and they stay? So I think that's there are many critical issues that companies are grappling with on the business side, but on the talent side, that's a real issue, as is diversity and gender equality, which is something we talk about. I obviously care about a lot, but there are countless studies out there. There's no need for any more empirical evidence that women in the workforce is good for business. It's good for communities, it's good for society, and yet it's not something that has been realized, particularly at senior levels. And that is a challenge that companies are very, very focused on as well. How do we level the playing field? How do we remove obstacles? How do we make sure that everyone has a fair shot at the same job, to the extent that they want it?
Very insightful. I think also you noted that this idea of lifelong learning is very important, and students in this generation, Generation Z, they need to have this ability to reinvent themselves and learn all of these talents because, as you mentioned, the corporate world is becoming very fluid. And there are a lot of unexpected deviations from the strategic plan, that that the corporate has set. Like we know traditionally how business used to operate, but this disruption and in technology and in so many ways has affected how business is done now. Now I want to go back to this idea of how you turned from being an employee to an employer yourself. But the key question here is, what really inspired you? What is the you talked a bit about the motivation behind Carnegie Crescent Consulting, your consulting company. But as an employer now yourself, how do you select your employees?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think about, first I'll tackle the question around, motivation. I've had 2 entrepreneurial ventures, 2 startups, and the motivation was very different, or the inspiration for both was very different. The first one was a desire to build something I wanted to, I'd always been part of a corporation and one unit within a much larger unit. And, at the end of the day, with large corporates, and this is just a difference. It's not good or bad. The difference is at American Express, I was the head of the US strategy team at American Express. But if I walked out the door and didn't show up forever again, American Express would be fine. It would keep going, and and that's a reality. Whereas, and I would say that about the CEO also of American Express, these companies will survive. Whereas when it's a startup, you really are you walk out, the company dies. And there's incredible amounts of dependence on the founder and the team, the management team. So wanting to build something that was mine, that I created, I remember the most exciting day of the entire experience, I remember, was the day the store was built. And I looked at it and I said, this was something I drew on paper. I had drawn this on a piece of paper and said, it could look like this. And this is the sign. And you see it in Manhattan, in the middle of the Union Square, built out. That is such an incredible feeling. That was what motivated me to create, basically. Carnegie Crescent is much more about to help. I feel like I have a duty and an obligation and a desire to help other people and to take the knowledge and my experience and help them to grow their businesses. And the way I select companies to work with, they all have to have a mission. They're very mission-driven companies. It has to be trying to do something good for the world. And many companies are. And so if I believe in the mission, that gives me a lot more drive to work with these companies and help them. And when I think about, hiring people, I've hired people into American Express or into consulting or into into one of my own businesses. And it's typically, I find that you looking at the person's potential is much more important than their actual current existing skills. Unless you're trying to fill a hole in your company right now. I need someone who can do this business model or run this valuation or do this coding. You want someone who has potential to grow, right? Someone who has a great attitude towards work, who is bright, who can think on their feet. So you ask a number of questions and you see their thought process. Is it logical? Is it structured? Rigor is very, very important. And by rigor, I mean, is this person someone who is going to do their work diligently and care that the outcome is as good as it can possibly get? Or is this person going to just kind of go through things pretty quickly, which is not going to be helpful to me? And a good cultural fit, someone who is, also having fun. Part of working is when you start working, you are going to spend the majority of your life with these people. You want people who you are a good cultural fun fit with, that you can actually enjoy the experience with, because it's many, many hours of your life that you're spending working with them. So, just a really strong work ethic and rigor, and a lot, and the fact that you can see potential in the individual when they're interviewing is very, very critical. Did they come prepared? Did they do a little bit of research? Did they check things? All of that is a strong indicator of whether they care enough to show up for you or not.
And this is quite insightful, but I mean, would you hire a person for this potential that has, entrepreneurial potential, entrepreneurial skills?
into my own businesses?
Or would you hire like a person with more leadership skills, or more fundraising abilities, or what would make a good employee for your entrepreneurial venture?
So it basically depends on what you need at that stage, but and all roles typically are needed, right? So you asked the question about what are the characteristics of the entrepreneurs. The successful entrepreneurs I work with, it's very consistent. They have something called grit and perseverance, right? They don't give up. They don't stop working. They get told no probably 10 times a day. They go out and they fundraise and they get told no. They go to supermarkets and say, can you stock my product? The supermarket says no. They go to supply, and they keep going. Do you know how many times Jeff Bezos of Amazon got told no? He got told no in huge, in Wall Street Journal and New York Times articles, front page. They would say this idea is ridiculous. So perseverance and grit and the ability to say it's fine, keep going is an incredible, is an asset that is necessary if you want to be an entrepreneur. That would be the first thing. The second thing is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and building a team around you that complements you. I have yet to meet one of the founders, maybe one of them, that's actually a good fundraiser. They tend not to be. They tend to be the person who has a great idea and a great vision and they want to execute on it. But they're not at all good at getting in front of investors and explaining the company and asking for funding, basically, and explaining the vision. So you need to hire people who can help you fundraise, because that's such a critical, or hire someone who is really, really good at that. There also might not be very good, a company I just worked with would always tell me how all their metrics and all their statistics were better than the competition, but they never did the data analysis, right? So in that case, you don't need someone senior, you need someone very junior actually to come and do a lot of data analysis. And by having those metrics and that data, they were able to raise their next round because, investors or finance people, they want to look at numbers. So I think there's a wide range of roles in entrepreneurs that they're hiring for. At the more senior level, you're looking for people who can complement the founder's skill set. At a more junior level, you're looking for people who can code. You're looking for people who can do data analysis. You're looking for people who can create presentations.
I think this is, I would agree completely. I think this is very also informative, and it gives a good perspective to the students and audience. I was wondering, which startup sector you perceive as most promising. So, can we say that in certain contexts, for example, the restaurant sector is better than the financial services sector, or is, more advantages in the here and now to other sectors? It's interesting, this diversity that you have, but I think someone with this diversity is best able to give a reasonable insight about which sectors you think are more promising now.
I would. So not food, actually. Food is a very, very challenging sector. The competition is intense and the failure rate is very, very high. There are two sectors that I am particularly interested in or passionate about that I think are great. The first is within finance, fintech. So it's like finance with a tech component. And that industry, I would say, even over the last 10 years, the disruption has been incredible. Think about the traditional, whether it's cash or check or credit card, and how that's moved to Venmo and Apple Pay and Zelle, and there are ways to transfer money instantly, and apps. Everybody has a phone. How you can use your phone to send money, to receive money, to make payments, to track, to budget. Think about Robinhood and, making like big companies like Robinhood that make it very easy for anyone like you or I to go on and sell stock and buy stocks really easily. Fintech is a big disruption area where there are, you can't count the number of fintech startups that start up every day, each one of them trying to disrupt part of an old system that has just gotten stale. Right. And there's a lot of innovation and many, many ways in which technology can make payments, finance, budgeting, banking a lot easier. I don't think I have gone to my bank in the last, and this could be more America than Egypt. I understand, but I don't think I've gone in the past 5 years. There's been no need to, I can do everything from my phone, or from my laptop. And the convenience that has created, and the value that's created for the consumer, that's a really hot industry. The other industry that I find fascinating and is also very hot is everything has a tech in the end now. So that this industry is called HR tech. And what that is this, looking at think about companies and human resources and people and the entire value chain of starting from when they have to go and hire people, find them, and then they bring them into the company, then they have to onboard them, then they have to train them, then they have to develop them, then they have to promote them, then they have to give them benefits and motivate them. This is everything HR does, right? Every one of those pieces is a very, very manual, archaic process. And so what companies are doing are saying, you know what, we're going to come in and we're going to give you, you're trying to develop your people and you can't figure out how to do it. We have a tech platform that is a professional development platform. Give it to every one of your employees, pay me $100 per license. Give it to every one of your employees and it'll walk them through professional development, and it'll give them access to executive coaches, and it'll give them access to training, and it'll be relevant to where they are in their career. And we're going to basically democratize access to professional development and take that and do it at every level of that value chain within HR. And that's an example of an industry that's going to get disrupted or is in the process of being disrupted right now. And HR departments, as a result, will shrink. And hopefully the outcome for the employees will be much better. So those are just a couple of examples of industries, but there are many, many industries that, the same way you think of transportation was transformed by Uber, and then the companies, or hospitality was transformed by Airbnb, or purchasing was transformed by Amazon. Those are two. Fintech is being transformed and HR tech is being transformed right now.
Quite interesting. This just reminded me of this, online game that my daughter was playing called Detroit. And the game is like an android. These androids, these robots that look human, and they start making decisions like humans, and then replacing humans. So
That's scary.
this tech changing everything, is a bit scary in a way. But I'm going to go back, to this idea of you putting on different hats. It's very amazing that you're able to integrate these different roles. It's not just that you had different phases throughout your career and these shifts, and that you're able to make in a swift and successful way. But it's also that I think right now you're putting at least 3 different hats together. There's the entrepreneur hat, the strategy consultant, and the educator, to say the least, maybe also the mother, and so many different roles. But I want to ask, how have your priorities changed now than where you first started? And I will reverse the question as well and ask you, is there anything that you would have done differently if we go back in time?
Yeah, absolutely. So my general philosophy is I have no regrets, because even the mistakes I made are kind of the reason why I'm able to do the things I'm doing today. But To first talk about priorities. I mean, my priorities have changed dramatically at different phases, and my definition of what success is has changed dramatically. And the turning point for me, again, very personally, is when I had children. It is a life-changing event for everyone, but particularly for the mother. I have two beautiful children, and they're wonderful, and they are the center of my universe. And my priorities shifted when they arrived. And everything I do is incredibly gratifying, satisfying. I continue to be very ambitious. I continue to do all that, but they are the number one priority. So I feel like when I look back, entrepreneurship, timing, I mentioned the concept of timing matters. One thing I did that was very wrong was not understanding what it meant to have a family and children at the time. I started a business and then I had children, thinking that the child would sit quietly in a corner while I just worked, which is not how it happens in real life. So I think there are real choices to be made, and compromises and sacrifices you'll have to make, both on the professional side and on the personal side, to continue to move forward. And that's just a fact of life. There are things that I wanted to do that I couldn't do because there's a significant amount of my time that needs to be dedicated to my family and my children. And how do you now, whereas I remember when I started off working in banking, pulling an all-nighter or spending the night in the office or working till 3 a.m., non-event, this was something I would do all the time. Or in consulting, traveling and being away for a week, 2 weeks, a year. What did it matter? Whereas once, now my priorities are very different. So how you define success also changes. I feel like it's a fallacy, and I'm speaking more to everyone in the room, but particularly the women, because you see, I was very, very impressed with Indra Nooyi. She was the former CEO of Pepsi. She's a woman, Indian woman, and she'd been CEO of Pepsi for 12 years. And they talked to her about, you did this great success, and you've proven that you can have it all, and you can have the work and the life and your home, and you have 2 kids, and everything is great. And she said, this whole you can have it all is a huge fallacy. My children, I'm paraphrasing, but don't like me very much. There were many times where I had to not see my children and not do things with my children in order to make it to CEO. So life is all about choices. You're going to have to make some very, very difficult choices, and make sure that you, I think, are very clear on what your priorities are and where your North Star is, and whether that's family or whether that's job or what that balance is. And that'll help guide your decisions. You'll become very comfortable once you're able to have those priorities set very clearly. Because, life changes, and it's important that you're able to adapt to your new situation. So I think, for me, where I am, today, and personally, my children are a huge priority. My career is also a priority, and I figure out how to make sure that those two things can coexist peacefully and both advance at a pace that I'm happy with. On the professional side, my consulting business is something that I cherish and I enjoy very much. I also am very actively involved in nonprofits. And they all tie in around the same theme. I work with a nonprofit that helps poor women in New York City find employment. I work with UNICEF that helps women and children. I work with also the Harvard Business School Club. I do a lot of pro bono free consulting for small businesses and entrepreneurs in New York City that just need help and don't have the money to pay for consulting services of someone who graduated from Harvard. So, I do those things, make me feel like I am really contributing to society in a meaningful way and giving back, while at the same time being able to, have a real job and earn money, and at the same time having time to spend with my family. And this is the right balance that works for me. For each one of you, you basically have to, make sure your priorities are clear to you and make your own decisions.
Wonderful. I think you really have this ability to decide, and you know exactly what you want, and you prioritize, in this, your life centers around this mission-driven success. And so actually, I was going to ask this question, but you kind of tackled it. You support UNICEF and Bottomless Closet, and this unified vision integrates, both your consulting as well as your nonprofit work, which is not many people are able to do this. To have their even their mission-driven nonprofit activities coincide and synergize with their actual, business strategy consulting and business work. So my question here would be: did you consider then having this mission-driven dimension? Did you consider establishing like a sustainable startup and sustainability-oriented kind of business? Where then you would actually in one project combine entrepreneurship and nonprofit, mission-driven enterprises, together, So did you consider this? Would you, going back, have actually done that? Maybe you are doing that. I don't know. This is the question.
Absolutely. I think that is the personification of the tough choices that you have to make. I would love to found another startup that has the mission, exactly the mission that I want, and build the team that I want, and use all of my knowledge to build my next startup. The timing is not right. I have a 6-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. And I am incredibly aware of the time demands of a startup. And it will be 24/7, and it just is. I've done it before, and I know, and it'll be all consuming. And I could do it, but it would come at a high price to my children at this stage, given their age. So that would be my plan A. My plan B is, okay, if I can't do that right now, I'm going to work with other women who are doing it and help them grow. And then when the time is right for me, I will then launch my own. So that's actually like a perfect example of the trade-offs that you will continuously make between, what is plan A, utopia, what you really want to do, and what is the next best thing that fits better into your life.
This is a very important point, because then it's kind of a lesson that you are, to the audience, because you are sort of supporting others who are doing this mission. So indirectly, you are actually doing it, but given time constraints, you have to actually make choices, like you mentioned. My final question is, because also running out of time, and we don't want to, take more of your time, but I was just reading this morning that this Generation Z, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, in a survey that the Chartered Institute of Marketing did, 71% of them believed they had missed out on important training opportunities due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that they feel less confident about themselves and their abilities. So what would be, some final advice that you'd like to give to Gen Z entrepreneurs, post-COVID-19?
So if you're thinking, I think I have 3 pieces of advice around, if you're thinking about, when after graduating, becoming an entrepreneur. Specific first to the point about COVID. So when people mostly worked remotely and stayed home in the US, I know in Egypt for a while, and then people went back. You miss out on training opportunities, because the more senior people who had the training and development kind of, stayed at home and said this was great, the more junior people lost out because they didn't have the face-to-face mentoring and interaction. And that's a fact, because you learn by osmosis, by like watching other people. You see how this person presents, and you see how this person talks, and you see the notes they take and how they do things, and you observe and you learn by that just as much as you learn by actually like taking a class. So there is a bit of a gap there, but it's not, you know, it's not something that's going to last forever. It's very, very easily bridged once you go back into the workforce. I think person-to-person interaction and having a good, strong mentor and boss and support at work will bridge this gap very quickly. So I would not worry about that. That gap exists in several different sectors, in several different age groups, and it will be bridged very quickly. Is my personal, you know, belief. I think if you're thinking about post school going and becoming an entrepreneur, I would think about 3 things. I would say timing is key. So if you have an incredible idea that you're like, if this doesn't hit the market now, someone else is going to take my idea and do it, go for it, you know. But if you don't, then be strategic about selecting the job that you're going to take so that it is something that builds the skill set and gives you a toolkit that'll help you when you're an entrepreneur. And regardless of what business you're going to start, you're going to need to market it. You're going to need to know how to fundraise for it. And you're going to need to know how to, you know, manage the finances for it. So pick one of those skills and take a job there and learn. So that would be my advice on timing. The second thing is, have a partner. Don't do it alone. A huge mistake I made, and I see other entrepreneurs make, it is a very, very challenging thing to do, particularly to do solo, because, you know, when I think about the 5 years I spent working on the restaurant concept, I did it alone. I didn't sleep for 5 years. You have to have someone else to give and take with. The ideas are better, and it allows you to, you know, to take time to take a break and recharge, and that benefits the business. So definitely find a good partner. And the third thing I would say is, like, don't go into entrepreneurship if you're not passionate about the actual idea or the product. So make sure that you are interested in it and that you would use it yourself, because it is a much tougher path than a corporate job where you go and you sit at your desk and you do your work, and then at 5 o'clock you go home. That is a very different path than the 24/7 all-consuming entrepreneurship role. You have to love it or you won't survive it. So make sure that it is something that you are really, really passionate about, because that'll help you get through it, and it'll, you know, hopefully propel you to much, much greater success.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I mean, it's been, I think, very insightful. It's a pleasure and honor to have had you today with us. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences. You know, you say a lot in such a casual manner. It's very amazing. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you again, you know, with more insights into strategy and all of this. You know, if you have the time, we'd be happy to have this again. Thank you.
I would love that. Thank you. This has been a real pleasure to talk to you all, and hopefully, inshallah, next time in person.
Yes, sure. Physically. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining us. I hope you liked it. Can you hear that?
And thank you so much. Bye.